There's a good Finnish study on conventional sauna where they took 2,300 middle-aged men over a 20-year period, showed it dramatically increased longevity if they used the sauna 4 times a week or more.
We're live with Randy Gomm. Randy, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks very much for having me on.
And excited for you to be the second episode after the official rebrand of the Damn Good Day Show, which is a really exciting time.
Great name.
And what you're doing is all about what we're about. You know, you have this incredible journey, which I really want to kind of break apart and kind of get the thumbnail snapshot of your career and understand what actually led to this kind of obtuse venture, given your background. And I would love to kind of learn a little bit about, you know, your career as a firefighter and some of the chemicals and different things that can happen. So if you don't mind, maybe let's just start by kind of giving that snapshot and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I think it's, I had, hang on a second, I'm just got to turn this off here. I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie. I was on the, Northern Mountain Rescue Team, Whistler Ski Patrol, and I was a firefighter. I thought I was kind of, ate healthy and stuff. And looking back at it now, I really didn't. Nothing really bothered me. As far as that. And then, because I was a firefighter for about 11 years and I came out with kind of musculoskeletal pain. And they said the label they gave me was fibromyalgia. And I didn't really think too much of it. Like I said, I was pretty mainstream. I was quite naive. I thought kind of health food stores were kind of where hippies and yuppies kind of thing. I was quite ignorant. And so, I just hadn't really opened myself up to that. And so I went along with the fibromyalgia label, and they gave me NSAIDs, natural steroidal anti-inflammatories, reduced the inflammation. Then I got gut problems. So what saved me is another fellow in my same 4-man crew. Not good for him, but good for me. Came down with the same symptoms, and I'd reached a point where I couldn't walk a block, couldn't hold on to a telephone, difficulty writing. So it was pretty severe, pretty limiting. And then once the other fellow came down with the same symptoms, the light came on. Wait a minute, this is not normal. And I realized it was probably work related. So I had an adipose tissue sample sent to a lab in the States called AccuChem Labs. Turned out I was very high in a chlorinated pesticide use in treating wood products, and also high in both mercury and lead. And it wouldn't be fair to say all I did was the infrared sauna to get better. I changed my diet. I worked on my stage 4 sleep. I did a bunch of things to get better. But of all the modalities I used, it was the most effective in lowering my toxic load, reducing my pain level, allowed me to get back to work. So that's why I got so passionate about the infrared saunas.
It's so interesting, the research that's being done on the amount of chemicals that can be seeping into your body. I feel a lot of health research is just kind of skimming the surface of it. You talk about this idea of detox, it's such a sexy term and it's so needed. But the idea of all the microplastics and the different mercuries and the different biochemicals that are inside of our products that are seeping into us for years and years and years. I mean, I like to say that our entire generation, I know my generation specifically, is probably at some point going to have some form of gut health problems because we grew up, I don't know about other people, but on Lunchables and Doritos and French bread pizza. And I mean, let me tell you, it was bomb, corn toasties. But, I know personally in my own health journey, it's caught up to me. And I got to a point where, my body just wasn't having it anymore. And that really led to my own self-discovery. So when you got into the world of understanding the whole sauna, when was kind of the first time you went into a sauna and what was that experience?
Well, I didn't know about infrared saunas at the time. So I was using a conventional sauna, long time periods and at a lower temperature. I was doing 4.5, 5 hours a day. Big thing is when you're putting that much time in the sauna, and it's the same with the infrared, you really have to make sure you replace your electrolytes and trace minerals. So the good news is you're sweating out your toxins and heavy metals, you're spreading out some good stuff too. And then once I discovered the infrared saunas, I discovered I could accomplish sweating a lot more at a more comfortable temperature, could stay in there a long time. And the far infrared sauna is I think is the best way to go as far as the detoxification. I can't make any health claims these days. I had a bit of some differences with our friends at Health Canada. I had to remove all the research papers off my website and stuff. So a specific kind of cases I can't talk about. But someone could type in PubMed, Medline research, far infrared saunas, or even conventional saunas. There's lots of studies out there, and but it's something that I can't have on my website, and I can't make any claims.
Right.
But yeah, for myself, it didn't happen overnight. I think, as you pointed out, everybody's toxic load is higher and higher these days. And the Environmental Working Group, there's been a few ones, they've done studies on people, they've done studies on newborns and looked at the placenta and stuff like that, and just looked at everybody's toxic load as far as phthalates and pesticides and heavy metals. And so, it's something that anything people can do to lower their toxic load will be advantageous over time. And so I'm a great fan of, I try to, I sell the saunas at my cost to put them in the fire halls, because I thought, okay, if you have a means, not every fire you go to, but if you go to a fire, you've been exposed and you have a means to lower your toxic load, it's only going to be advantageous,
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the differences in sauna. So I originally learned about you and the reason we're connected today, because I personally was looking for a sauna. I've heard a lot of different stuff. Dr. Rhonda Patrick has a great podcast on it. She's probably one of the most well-known talking about it. And so many people just say so many great things. It's one of those things that you don't see any negatives besides obviously EMFs, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I was looking for a sauna, and it seems like a lot of it is sort of like, the mattress industry, where a lot of it's very ambiguous. You don't really know what you're getting.
Yeah.
It seems like brand is a really big player. And, it's complicated, especially when you're getting sold to and all these things. So let's kind of jump into the difference between the three type of saunas, between the steam sauna, the infrared, and then the dry sauna.
Yeah. Okay. And there's probably, and I'll add a couple more because there's different kinds of infrared as well. But your conventional sauna is where, we'll call it the Finnish sauna, where you've got hot room, air temperatures, 180 to 200 degrees, sometimes 205. Sometimes people put water on the rocks. You get a little bit of steam with that. They've been used for years. There's a good Finnish study on conventional sauna where they took 2,300 middle-aged men over a 20-year period, showed it dramatically increased longevity if they used the sauna 4 times a week or more. It reduced fatality, by 40%. So that's huge. If someone said you could take a pill or you could take some magic kind of potion and would reduce, it would increase their longevity by 40%, you think, wow, what is that? But nobody seems to really talk about it. But it's a good study. And then they took this same data group, okay, again, it was over a 20-year period, 2,300 middle-aged men. And then they looked at dementia and Alzheimer's, and they found it reduced that by 64 and 65%. So just like, wow. And anyway, so that's conventional sauna. That's not infrared. But I believe, it's the principle still the same. You're raising core temperature, you're sweating profusely. There hasn't been the same sort of studies on far infrared. There are some there. Like I said, I won't quote them, but if you type in PubMed or Medline, far infrared, you'll see the research studies there. As far as the infrared sauna, that's the disadvantage of the conventional saunas is you can only stay in there for a short time period because of the temperature. So even that study, the average time was like 14 minutes. So in a far infrared sauna, you can easily stay in there 30, 40 minutes. It's not an issue because the air temperature is usually between 115 Fahrenheit and let's say 149. It's in that range. So a lot of people say, well, I can't take the saunas. It's too hot. I'm feeling uncomfortable. They find in the far infrared sauna, they go, wow, this is great. I'm sweating profusely, but I'm not feeling wiped out. I'm not coming after. Now, the steam sauna is good as far as the only thing what I've seen with studies on detoxification, even though you think you're sweating a lot in the steam sauna, you're actually not sweating as much because the moisture is already in the air and it's on your skin. The reason why we sweat is because the evaporation on the sweat in the body cools the body down. So if the moisture is already there, your body actually doesn't sweat as much. So if you look at some of the detoxification studies comparing conventional dry saunas with a steam sauna, they'll always be using the dry sauna. So that's kind of the difference there. There's some benefits of the steam sauna, but just as far as detoxification, all the studies that I can find show with using a dry conventional sauna. Now with the far infrared, again, the temperatures, you're heating the body more and the air less. Okay. So the far infrared, it's something we're exposed to. Let's say if you laid on the beach on the summertime and you feel the warmth from the sand, that's far infrared. If you feel heat from someone else's body, that's about 9.4 microns. So it's something we're exposed to quite a bit. And I went into, before I was a firefighter, I used to be a biologist. So I never minded looking at research. And so I went into far infrared thinking, is there anything that's a contraindication? Is there something that's going to be, dangerous down the road, like microwave or something? And the studies that I can find, the animal studies just showed increased, to be fair, they're done in rabbits and mice, but increased longevity, increased mobility. Most of the studies that were done on people, it showed in some only positive benefits, without me telling you what the study said, right?
Yeah,
it's fine line I'm walking here. I'm finding it frustrating, but it is what it is, right?
It's true though. No
yeah.
health claims, man. That's the world we live in. And it's, I mean, I think that obviously it's done out of good faith, right? But because some people can take that the wrong way, but you're doing a great job. And it's interesting when I personally have my own experience in steam saunas, I don't like it. I just don't like the experience. I know some people like it, but I get in there and I'm wet right away, but I'm wet. I'm not sweating and I can't see anyone. And I don't know if that's like enjoyable to me personally. I like the idea of getting a little, like little meditation in. I like to be, clean and then see sweat coming from my body. That's just a personal preference. But isn't there a big difference too between the typical Finnish sauna where you get 4 or 5 sweaty dudes in a room and someone's pouring water on some hot coals versus the infrared when it comes to overall cleanliness and potential damage to a home?
Yeah. Well, your typical far infrared sauna, our far infrared sauna is just plugged into a normal circuit. The smaller ones would be 15 amp. The larger ones are 20 amp. But it just plugs into the wall. So there's no plumbing, there's no special things meant for vent. So the moisture content that's coming is strictly from your sweat. So as long as you're sitting on a towel and you bring a small towel in there, wipe yourself off, you won't find there's moisture getting in the room or something like this. You don't have to worry, you open the door and there's a whole bunch of steam. So that part makes it very easy to be able to put into anybody's home, And the kits, it takes about an hour and a half to put together. It's not like an IKEA piece of furniture where someone is going to be muttering my name under the breath. It's pretty easy to put together. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned IKEA, but anyway.
No, it's true. I'll mention it right now. IKEA furniture is the worst.
So yeah, it's very easy to put together. Sometimes people hire someone to put them together, but they are pretty, and like I said, it's no exaggeration. It's an hour and a half to put together. And then, so it's like a piece of furniture and that you just plug in. But because the far infrared, there's something called the inverse square law from a light source. And what does that mean? If you're 1 inch away from a light source versus, let's say, you're 6 inches away. If you're 6 inches away, it goes 6 to 6 is 36. And you put a 1 over top, you're getting 1/36 the intensity. If you're 10 inches away, you're getting 100th the intensity. That's the advantage of a far infrared sauna. If you have a lot of surface area of heaters against the body, now you're heating up the core temperature and you're sitting usually within an inch of it. Now, the disadvantage is sitting close to the heaters and the saunas is many of them are high in EMF or electromagnetic field. Sometimes it's called electromagnetic radiation, EMF. It's the same term, just different wording. Now, I talked to a gentleman the other day and he says, well, what's the big deal? We're all exposed to EMF. And I said, that's true. But I asked him if he owned a microwave and he said, yes. And I said, well, an older microwave, if you had one, I'm not suggesting to use a microwave, but I'm just saying if you had one, if you took a Gauss meter up to within a couple of inches, it measured about 30 milligauss. But it always affected by distance, like this inverse square law. So as you back off, let's say a foot or 2 feet, it drops down to 0. So the guy said he still wasn't concerned. And I said, okay, would you feel comfortable about turning on your microwave and standing or sitting next to a couple of inches of it when it's on for half an hour every other day? And he goes, no. And I said, why not? He said, well, just to be on the safe side. I said, aha, you recognize that there's maybe a potential of EMF. So what's different sitting in an infrared sauna? So it's really important in an infrared sauna to make sure it's in low levels of EMF. Now, TCO or Swedish standards are 2 milligauss or less. Ours would average 0.3 milligauss. I'm not suggesting you have to get a sauna that averages 0.3, but anything under 2, I would be happy with. And also there's something called EF, electrical fields. There's some new research in Europe. It's measured in volts per meter. So it's important to have that down now too, because It always seems a shame to me to have an infrared sauna that you're buying for your health to detoxify and other health benefits, and you're sitting in a strong electromagnetic field and don't know it. And if a company, the best thing to do, and I never am critical of other companies. So the question to ask any company is, please send me your EMF testing, and then look at it closely to see, do they actually test the sauna at what they call pointed body contact, the wooden slats you lean against, or are they just testing the heaters by themselves? So that's good. Just testing the heaters by themselves and not including electrical connection and wiring. So that's just something to look for when you're looking for that.
That's interesting. So if I sit an inch from a sauna and I test it versus a foot from a sauna and I test it, we're going to see light and day differences. So a lot of these sauna companies may put claims out there that they have these low EMF ratings, but the question is where were the tests done? And my question is if this is such a major concern, right? No one wants to put their face next to a microwave. Like that's nuts, right? It just human reactions probably thinks that's not a good idea. Why doesn't the rest of the world jump behind this and start making their saunas like this? Do you think it's inevitable that it'll trend that way? Or
eventually. But for instance, in Sweden and some of the other countries, they have way stricter standards. Okay. In the US and Canada, we don't. We kind of minimize, maybe there's probably a bunch of different reasons. Sometimes you may have high tension wires, the big wires going ahead, and you have housing that is quite close to it. Okay. So if the government or powers to be recognize that this is a hazard, then some of the stuff they're doing they can't do, right? Because you can take a Gauss meter up there and it might be 80 milligauss, and that's a house and you're there. Because I've gone to some of these places and I've taken a meter, and I have good tri-field meters. I have a few of them, and I'm thinking, wow, if these people only knew that that's where they're staying, and there's different studies. Some of the studies regarding some of the cancer studies are obviously done with animals, but there's lots of research. If you Google it, there's lots of research on hazards of EMF. And so the big thing is with distance, okay? You can have a lot of things in your house that have electromagnetic fields. Just measure the distance. Once you're a certain distance away, then you're okay. It's kind of, so that's why it's kind of unique in an infrared sauna, because you don't have the luxury of sitting a foot or 2 feet away from the heaters.
Got it. And then what's the deal with the VOCs or VCOs? Apologies if I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah,
Can you tell me a background on that?
You said it correctly. Yeah, I said it correctly. It stands for volatile organic compounds. And it just means that something is toxic or off-gassing. And so it's really important to have everything in your sauna that is not off-gassing, because I deal with sometimes with people with MCS, multiple chemical sensitivity. They're very sensitive. They're like the canaries out there. And when I was sick, I was like that myself. It used to drive my daughters crazy, because they couldn't wear perfume, they couldn't wear hair, spray, scented hairspray or bounce in the clothing. And it's quite funny, your olfactory sense, it's like, it just gets heightened. So sometimes, let's say my daughter would walk in with a friend and she might have some sort of hairspray or something on. And I say, Teresa, she said, quick, and they get her daughter downstairs, because I would react, right? And so it's like as a defensive mechanism, I guess your olfactory sense is heightened. So it's really important to make sure that all the materials in there should be real wood inside your sauna. There shouldn't be MDF board, which off gases formaldehyde. So those are something so that way you're in a pristine environment. Right?
That's interesting you say that. We had a guest on the show, Dr. Greg Horn, and he is the epitome of science and studies and health. He makes a living doing it, building products, designing products, takes a lot of pride in it. And he was telling us the story of how he built this brand new facility. It was gorgeous. His company moved over there. Everything was amazing. He had this beautiful corner office, everything was brand new, but he was so sick. He was so sick to the point where he was just felt like he was dying internally every single day. He couldn't figure out the reason. And it ended up being chemical sensitivities to the formaldehyde in the paint or something in the walls. Yeah. And that was causing it. And it's crazy that these chemical sensitivities exist, because how many people right now are existing with these chemical sensitivities and have no idea it's happening and haven't just done the research to get it. And then one step further, most people just don't take the extra step to figure out what's wrong with them. So many people have issues today and they're not taking actions to do it. They'll go to a doctor and they'll say, what's wrong? They'll be like, this is what's wrong. They'll be like, okay, for 10 years they deal with it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of, because I run into people like this all the time. I'll give you an example. I had a couple in West Vancouver. They bought a new home and they had flu-like symptoms, husband, wife, and a child. That was about 6. And finally, one of their friends said, you guys have been sick since you moved into the home. So they had their carpet tested. I don't know how they figured out what was the carpet. And it sounds pretty graphic, but they put the carpet in some testing with some mice, and mice died. Okay, that doesn't sound like the ideal way to test, but that's what they did at the time. I'm talking 20 years ago, and they realized that here they were in that toxic environment. The sad part about it is I met this gentleman about 5 years after that stuff, and the effect that had on him. His wife still couldn't work. His daughter couldn't go to public school in case someone had bounce on their clothing or any sort of perfume products or petroleum-based products. And so it dramatically affected their life. And they had fatigue, cognitive impairment, muscle pain, very similar things that I went through. And so you really have to be careful. The big thing probably is MDF board, because it does, how if you've ever someone's new house and you open a cupboard, you get that kind of odor a little bit. That's usually part of it's formaldehyde. Usually you don't smell formaldehyde, but it's other things that come along with it. And that off gas a lot. And it may off gas for 3 months, or it may off gas for a year. And so it's better off. You can get MDF, multiple density fiberboard, that doesn't off gas formaldehyde now. You can insist on having real wood or external grade plywood. There's different things you can do if you look into it to minimize your exposure.
Now let's talk about, maybe this will be a lesson to everyone else that's building saunas today, but let's talk a little bit about, the process of you deciding to build a company doing this. Can you walk me through the steps of the day? You're like, you know what, F this, I'm gonna build my own sauna company.
Yeah.
And tell me about that first experience. Was it miserable? Was it easy? Like what were the thoughts?
Well, to be fair, originally I went along with another company. Was built in Calgary. So I was virtually selling their saunas. Okay. And so then, but we had ceramic heaters, and we had a number of complaints I sell to a lot of practitioners, and obviously their patients and clients, and about the hot spots and cold spots in the sauna. So that was a big issue. So then I started looking into the carbon fiber, and I was concerned because about off gassing and stuff like this. And that's why I had independent VOC testing done of our whole sauna, not just heaters or not just any other components. And the thing that I was looking for is for someone to get more coverage against the body, lower surface temperature of the heaters. Because the advantage is when you lower the surface temperature of the heater, you move further into the far infrared range. And that's what I wanted, because that's what the research supported. And so that's why people sweat profusely on our saunas, because someone eventually, it's a lot of things is when you're getting something built, you have to set up, I would say, boundaries. Okay, this is the limit on this. This is what I want in this. And with any manufacturer, then you constantly say, okay, you're straying from this. This is the boundary. And once you've got that in place, and then they recognize that you're really fussy and you're really, whatever, then it's fine, right? But you have to manufacturing. You definitely have to stress that, and you have to make them accountable. And then once you do that, that doesn't mean I still don't test the saunas, right? I do all the time. But I am type A that way. But every sauna needs to be set up and tested, okay? Because originally what was going through the manufacturing is that originally I was finding units that were sometimes, rather than averaging 0.3 milligauss, I would average in 0.5, and I'd say, hey, what's going on here? And they'd say, well, we randomly test every, 1 out of every 12 saunas or what. And I said, well, that doesn't work for me. I said, every sauna needs to be set up and tested. And they said, well, that slows down production. And I said, well, then fine, charge me more, and so, but that's what we need to do. See this, once you set those parameters or those boundaries, what your expectation is, and you hold to it, then it works fine. But that's always a problem, because, as a manufacturer, you're going to try to push things to make things a little bit cheaper or faster or whatever. And that, so once you know that, so it was a learning curve for me for that.
Yeah, and that's what fascinates me about you, is because a lot of people would assume you're sort of this business mogul that wants to go in and start selling tens of thousands of saunas and go retire on a yacht. But that doesn't seem to be your demeanor. Obviously, you're a for-profit company and you're building a business that helps people, and you take that very seriously, right? But with that said, it seems like you cut so many of these little chords that most people would do to push prices up, to drive more sales, because you're all about making sure the product is amazing. And it's because you, as a founder, have gone through this terrible experience that you don't want to happen to other people. I think that's admirable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks. I didn't actually ever intend to get in the sauna business. Um, once I had my own health benefits, I thought, there should be some places in Vancouver and Vancouver Island where people that are on disability can go to use the saunas. So I arranged to sell at my cost to some of these practitioners. So there's about half a dozen places in the lower mainland of Vancouver where people could go to use a sauna. And I went back to the fire. I was back and now working at the fire department. And then all of a sudden, people that used it were benefits and said, "Hey, I'd like to buy one of these." So that's how it evolved. I never really thought, "Geez, I'm going to sell these saunas and make some money." It was just kind of an invent, but of course, then it evolved from there. So yeah, it was interesting how things. I never thought I'd be selling the infrared saunas, and with my staff too. And I don't like the whole high pressure sales thing, and so so none of my staff work on commission. They just I pay them a good wage, and when the company does well, which it is, they get bonuses. So that way there's no pressure on my staff to try to close a sale or complete a sale on commission. Someone else, they can phone back and someone else can deal with somebody. The advantage is, and people say this all the time, is what we're doing is trying to educate the consumer. And if they asked about brand X, we won't comment on that particular brand. We'll tell people just what to look for. And I think it's I'm not saying that's the only way to sell. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to sell, but that's what we do. It seems to work. Right?
It's interesting because my favorite banking institution is Vanguard. They're the MVPs, in my opinions. They're the goats of the financial industry. And the reason being is that Vanguard reps don't get commissioned on sales. So when I call Vanguard and I want to open up a brokerage account, I know I'm speaking to some guy that's on a salary, but he's not getting paid on, selling me up on a certain account. And thus they do probably get comped in terms of a bonus at the end of the year. Right. Yeah. But that's totally normal. And that business model, when we have a conversation, we're just having a conversation, right? And that conversation is important when you're weeding out all the bullshit in the world in terms of that's out there, because there's a lot. And, we live in a day where reviews are everything, right? Reviews are amazing because they've changed the world of e-commerce, because it's like, hey, a review is amazing. But if I see a 5-star review on Amazon, immediately I assume this is a great product. But now we're seeing more than ever, sometimes people are kind of flaking those reviews, if you would, by having people reach out and send you a gift. Hey, give me a 5-star review and I'll send you $20. I get it all the time. And guess what? I do it all the time. I'm like, hey, great business. You're going to give me $20 off. I'm down.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's like those authentic reviews of real people using it are so powerful. And you guys are seeming to capture that.
Yeah, no, it's been cool. We get lovely responses from people, not just through customer service or how they feel after using the sauna. Big thing is with the sauna use. And I always tell people, look, there's 2 things to watch for. And I mentioned electrolytes earlier, but because you sweat so profusely in the sauna, many people with chronic health problems would have, they often say it's intestinal dysbiosis, which is a polite way of saying you have, critters in your body, parasites, fungi, bacteria, and you're getting a malabsorption problem. So if they start to use the sauna too much too soon, 2 things can happen. Is they're already low in electrolytes and trace minerals, so it makes that worse. So they can drink coconut water, they can go to a health food store and buy some sort of electrolyte mix. There's a lot of things they can do. They can chew on dulse. It's a seaweed, it's an acquired taste. You like it, you hate it. There's different things they can do. Coconut water is probably an easy way to start. And then, because your body as a defensive mechanism, if you're low in electrolytes and trace minerals, it minimizes your sweating. And so a lot of people that have difficulty sweating, the first thing I'll suggest is increase your electrolytes. And so that's interesting. And the other thing is that if someone's toxic, don't start off doing the sauna daily. They're very powerful as far as detox. And what will happen is they'll feel really good and they'll use the sauna for about 3-4 days in a row. And then boom, a major, what they call is a Herxheimer reaction, headache, flu-like symptoms. Now, the theory with this is you're mobilizing, let's say 90%. This isn't an actual figure, I'm just saying. So let's say it's 90% that's coming through your skin that you're dumping out, and then 10% your liver's having to deal with. Well, many of these people have compromised phase 2 detox pathways. So if they go a little bit slower, might start off with every 3 days. They might do that for 3 or 4 weeks or longer, and every other day for 3 or 4 weeks and longer, and then they can use it daily. And we just had way better success. Healthy people can start off right out of the get-go and it's not a problem. But if you start to use the sauna and get a headache, that's a sign. Say, okay, back off a bit. And so don't underestimate how powerful the saunas are for like detox, right?
Herxheimer reactions is crazy. I mean, I've had SIBO. I do think that parasites is my deal right now. So I'm actually starting a little moon cleanse because the full moon's
Oh
in
yeah,
3 days.
that's always a lot of fun. Yeah,
And it's interesting because I do feel more crappy about 4 or 3 days before a full moon, which is a sign that parasites are getting active in your body. So
yeah, yeah.
really promising though.
Yeah, that's cool. It's very cool. Yeah.
It's interesting that with these parasites that are detoxing our skin, the only two ways that we typically detox as humans is when we, pee or poop, right? The third one is when you exercise very vigorously and you get a nice sweat in. But the issue is you got to exercise very vigorously. And guess what? Humans are inherently kind of lazy in general as a population. We don't want to go and put our bodies through that stress, or they have health issues that don't allow them to. They have, bones that are screwed up, back pain. I've had bulging discs. I've had all the lower back problems. I
Yeah.
understand those issues. It's hard for people to go in and get that sweat in. So it's
Yeah.
interesting
Oh,
that the
sure.
sauna, you can go in there and you can get many of the similar effects of putting your body through a lot of stress that forces mitochondria to renew, or there's better technical terms to explain that. But I think it's very similar to, Wim Hof's ice bath method. One of my good friends, Sky, who actually produces the podcast, shout out, he went to Wim Hof's session in Poland and did the
Oh
2 weeks
wow,
out there.
that's cool. Yeah, I've
And he
heard a
did,
lot of things about it.
and
Yeah.
it's changed his life. I mean, Sky went from being, a great, always a hard worker, always enjoyed a good time, likes to party, have it, whatever. And now he hosts meditation retreats. He has ice baths in his back. He's gone full plant. I'm like, bro, what did they do to you? He's like, it's the ice, man. It changes you. It's interesting that these extremes, when you're putting your body through that, can have so much in your
Yeah.
physiology.
Yeah, no, I've read a lot on it. I've never, to be fair, I've gone into the ocean, whatever, but I've never done the length of time that he's talking about and hanging in there. So yeah, it's something that I'm intrigued to do, but I'll let you know when I do it. Right?
Randy'sIcebaths.com coming in
Yeah,
hot.
yeah, that's right. The other
I,
thing that I was going to mention about that it sometimes comes up with infrared saunas is you have far infrared saunas, near infrared saunas, and I think they talk the full spectrum. So what I found, if you go into PubMed or Medline, the research papers are all on far infrared saunas. The research on near infrared saunas is actually, no, sorry, on near infrared is actually really good. It shows wound healing, mitochondria function improvement, tissue repair. But if you go into the research papers, they're all done on lasers and light emitting diodes, where they're touching the skin or touching the petri dish because of this inverse square law from light source. You have to be close. And so be careful if you're getting an infrared sauna, that if someone throws some lights in behind there and say, hey, guess what? We have near infrared too, and you have all the benefits. Ask for the what frequency they're in, what strength they are, how far are they away from the body. So I'm a great fan of the LED lights and lasers. I have a light paddle myself. If I've injured my thumb, I would use that on there. And it's usually in the 630 to 940 nanometers, a very specific range, some of the red range and some of the near infrared range. But to me, you shouldn't take that research, put some lights in your sauna, and you say they have the same health benefits. So I can't find any research papers online in PubMed, not articles, but actually research papers on near infrared and saunas. So that's why we always stick with the far infrared range.
Interesting. What about the whole red light color sauna therapy, or
Yeah, well,
what's the deal with that?
Yeah, well, I'm all for red light too, because that's when I said the 630 to 940 nanometers, some in the red and some in the near infrared. I'm just not a fan as far as the sauna use, okay? Because when you're in this proper range, okay, and near infrared, it actually is not heating up the body. And so when you stray out of it, yes, you are then heating up. Let's say you take these hot bulbs, okay, in a hardware store, and you can put them in and stuff like this. You have to say, okay, what actually percentage is in that 630 to 940 nanometers? And you'll discover most of the time it's like 15%. And because the inverse square law from light source, because they're so hot, you have to be a couple feet away. So I don't go, to be fair, you're benefiting from sweating, and everybody benefits from sweating. But from my position, you shouldn't take the research on near infrared and it says it applies to your sauna. That's, so it's kind of, so red light therapy, near infrared therapy, I'm a great fan of. I'm just not a fan of saying that it's being used in the sauna to make the same health benefits.
To be clear, when you're in the sauna, because your saunas have this really great, like epic LEDs, there can be like 6 different colors. When
Yeah.
that LED's on, is that a form of red light therapy or green light therapy, or is
I
that
would
just
say no. It's all the sauna companies that have those lights overhead. To be fair, I would say call them mood lighting rather than really chromotherapy. The reason being is just what I'm talking about. They're not strong enough or intense enough. There was a study that showed, let's say, people with SAD, okay, and usually people seasonal affective disorder, and to counter that, sometimes they look into a light box. And most of the studies, it's using white light and then about 10,000 lux, but they're so many inches away from the eye. I don't know exactly. Let's say it's 10 inches away from the retina of the eye, and and then they discovered they could take blue LED lights and accomplish the same thing on only 400 lux versus 10,000. So you're thinking, wow, okay, that's having some effect on the body, but that's much stronger than these lights overhead. So you really got to you really can't make any claims to lights overhead. Some people love it and they'll say, oh, the red does this for me and the blue. And I'm not denying that colors do have effect on people, okay? But you can't physiologically show that that's having the effect. So I would just say, well, it's moonlighting rather than making any claims.
yeah, setting the mood is great. It's a cool feature.
Yeah,
I really,
yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's a
Yeah, some people
beautiful.
love it. Said, oh, I do so well with green, or I do so well with red, and I go, okay, right.
Maybe
That's
you're a
great.
leprechaun, bro, deep down inside. So
Yeah,
tell me about the timing. So with the parasite deal, like one thing that I've learned is that parasites are very active at night. And I always have this issue where I wake up at like 4 in the morning
yeah,
after getting like 6 hours of sleep. And then I'm up for 30, 40 minutes. And I could try so hard to go back to bed. And, I go pee, I do whatever, one else does. I'm like just trying to think, but my brain starts pacing and I feel like it's due to parasites. And I've learned that parasites are more active at nights than they
yeah,
are during the day. Does
yeah.
that mean that it's technically better to do a sauna like right before you go to sleep, or what would you be your
Well,
when to do it?
to be fair, I've never really timed it as far as parasites or someone that parasites. You'll have to let me know on that, okay? But because as far as I deal with a lot of people with, like I said, intestinal dysbiosis, if you do it too close to bedtime and your core temperature is raised, you'll have trouble sleeping because you have to bring your core temperature down to sleep. Okay. But if you do it, people can usually handle doing it about an hour and a half before bed. So that there's different ways to do it. Sometimes people will start off the day, have an infrared sauna, have a shower and go to work because you don't feeling wiped out. You actually feel somewhat energized. So it's very different than a conventional sauna. Conventional sauna, you wouldn't hop in the sauna and have a shower and go to work. You'd be kind of a little bit wiped out, right? Or you'd be, I won't say wiped out, you'd be relaxed. Here, so some people either do it, they sometimes do it early in the evening, or sometimes they'll do it earlier in the day. I sell to a lot of top trainers now, and it's interesting because I talked to one of the Olympic in Calgary, one of the gentleman was head top trainer for Olympic athletes. And I said, well, how do the Olympic athletes use it? And he says, well, they cheat. He says, they go in fully clothed for about 10 minutes just before they start to sweat. He says, then they'll go and do their intense workout because their muscles already warmed up. They minimize the warm up time period. And then he says, then after they go they do the workout, then they go in the sauna for about half an hour and they stretch inside the sauna and stretch soon after coming out. And that's been very effective in increasing the range of motion. So that was interesting. I'd never really been selling to trainers. Now I sell to a lot of them. So that's been interesting.
Very interesting. So the idea is go in there, get your body warmed up literally
Yeah.
through the heat. Why can't you have the same effects just going out and tanning on a hot day? Like what's the big difference?
Well, the big difference is because the infrared penetrates that inch and a half, into the tissue. So it is heating up the core body. So you go outside, it's the same as um, a normal, we'll say not normal, a conventional sauna is heating up the air by convection. Okay, you hear the hot air and it's heating up from the outside. A good far infrared sauna is actually heating up the body. It's heating up the core temperature. So that's why it's quite different than going outside on a hot day, is because you're actually here, and it's nowhere near the microwave range. It's not, people worry about that on my microwave in their body, and it's a totally different spectrum. So and like I said, that's why myself, I was very cautious at first. That's why I read all the studies as far as, is there anything that's going to be contraindication. If a woman was pregnant, I probably wouldn't use an infrared sauna. I wouldn't use any sauna. Couldn't find any study regarding infrared and pregnancy, but I did find a study with hot tub use in California, greater chance of miscarriage. So just be prudent if a woman's pregnant not to use the sauna. Also, I was getting feedback as far as another contraindication from women that were breastfeeding. They won't. This is like 15 years ago. Somebody phoned me and said, "My kid's colicky. Do you think it has anything to do with the sauna?" And all of a sudden, hadn't even entered my mind. So I phoned a toxicologist at UBC at the university here, and I said, "Is there any chance you're mobilizing toxins in the breast milk?" And she said, "Oh yeah." So I advise everybody that's breastfeeding not to use an infrared sauna. And I've had women still continue to use it and say, "Look, I like it because it promotes milk flow and everything else." And my kid hasn't had any problem. But I still, I mean, you can't, my advice would not to use it if you're breastfeeding.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of these studies we just don't know yet. I mean, we're going to know in 20 years when all this stuff
Yeah.
comes out, but it's really taking the best to your knowledge and finding people you can trust, which at the end of the day is really hard. It's really hard in a world where everyone's just trying to sell stuff,
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Which is why I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you. I'm excited that we're promoting your brand. Just to be very clear, I don't get any financial compensation promoting Randy's brand or any of that stuff. I just truly believe that this company is amazing for the infrared saunas deal. I've done the research. I stayed up for like 2 or 3 days, just like listening to saunas, and I feel I'm a decently, intermediate expert on this, right?
Well, I appreciate you doing the research and finding us. That's great.
And it's interesting because more and more people, especially my friends, which I've created so many friends in this gut community, not by purpose, but by I have this gut issue, man. Like, people be like, "Oh, look, Ian's on another cleanse." Yeah, I don't want to be, dude. Like, I like to cook. I want to make some bomb pancakes with maple syrup. Are you kidding me? Like, that sounds amazing. But I feel like crap. And if I can find something to help me, which it seems like all the research and everyone I've talked to has said the sauna makes him feel more charged up in the morning or at night. It makes him sweat, makes you put yourself through a full body workout in a sense. You get that mitochondria feel, and it's very meditative. So the only 2 times that I can ever meditate, or actually one time, is when I'm true and like I'm just an obtuse, is when I scuba dive. When I'm scuba diving, I feel so meditative. I don't think about my phone. I don't think about anything else. I'm thinking about, I got to keep breathing because I'm 60 feet underwater. Like, bro, focus,
Yeah.
Anything that can help you come down to a place where you can meditate, breathe, get that stuff in. I think that the sauna is going to encourage that behavior in me. And that's what it seems like from what I've seen.
Yeah. No, I think I have a lot of people that do meditation in the sauna and stuff like that. And that's kind of, people do have the opportunity if they want the sound, they can. I avoided things like Bluetooth just because I deal with a lot of people with sensitivity with, radioactive fields, radio fields and electrical fields. So it's, but you still you can put a wire through the roof because we have a old CD player and a radio. We can but you make a connection to a wire through the roof. It goes outside. You put your cell phone outside the sauna. You don't want to break your cell phone in the sauna too long anyway, because eventually you get a heat warning. And I can't guarantee it's not going to damage your cell phone. So but people can listen to music too. So sometimes people put on a meditative tape if they want or something like that. Right?
Yeah, or you can get your nasty sweat up in like the stuff. They say it's waterproof, but it's probably not. What about keeping it clean? When you're in that sauna, is it easy to keep it clean? What's your suggestions with cleaning your sauna, and what's your suggestions with avoiding needing to clean the sauna?
Well, there's 2 things. Commercial place. I always suggest this polycarbonate they put on the bench just for commercial places. It's inert or stable under 200 degrees. I did a lot of testing on that, so it's non-toxic. But for home use, as long as you sit on a thick towel and you either put 100% cotton mat or a towel on the floor and take a small towel and then wipe yourself off. My sauna, the one I have now, is about 8 years old. It looks brand new, but I'm very conscious of that. Sometimes people will take a non-toxic, soap or something like that, and they'll wipe the bench and stuff like that. But most of the time, you actually don't need to, because with the heat, it's killing any germs in there. That's the bacteria. That's not the issue. We've never had any issue with fungus growth or anything like that in our saunas. All our saunas are kiln dried, so that's not an issue. But yeah, no, it's there's not really a lot to do, but you do have to be, if you don't, put a thick towel on the bench and a thick towel on the floor, 100% cotton mat on the floor, that wood will eventually get stained. Some of the stuff that comes out to you I'll give you an example. There was a lovely woman had a detoxification clinic in Vancouver, and she phoned me one day and she says, "Randy, you got to come down here." And I I thought there was something wrong with her sauna, right? So I whipped over there, and there's nothing wrong with her sauna. She had that, and she had these white towels, and they had black marks and yellow marks and brown marks on them, and she said, I can't get these colors out. I can't get these stains out of the towels, right? And I laughed and I said, well, you have two choices. Have your clients bring their own towels, A, or B, go to a darker color, right? But it shows you the stuff that's coming out of people. It's just amazing. I had even myself, when I first started using an infrared sauna, one day I looked down, I had this black stuff oozing out of my left chest, okay? And being the biologist before, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. The next day I was ready. I had a little glass jar. I had a little spoon. I was gonna test this stuff well, of course, the next day nothing came out, and I was so annoyed with myself because all I had to do was take a Kleenex that day, and I could have had it tested, but I didn't. So it's fascinating. Stuff comes out sometimes at different time periods, and everybody's different. There was a woman. I won't mention her name or the clinic, but it was back east, and the doctor was telling me, when the woman came out, her towel, she had a beige towel, and her towel was like pink in color. Not a bright pink, but it had this pinkish hue. And everybody says, wow, what have you been exposed to? She was about 55 years old. And she says, nothing. She's an office worker, and, no chemicals, and didn't use pesticides. And everybody's perplexed. And then she said, well, in my youth, I'd had a bad acne problem for about 6 years. And I took tetracycline every day, and it used to have that pink filler in there. And so they can't prove it, but she suspects that all these years, maybe that stuff was coming out,
Imagine if sauna youth helps like young kids fight acne.
Yeah. Well, what you have to be careful is with acne is it will flare up a bit at first. So I had to tell my teenage daughters, I warned them, okay? And I said, look, it's going to flare up a little bit first, but just ride it out, okay? Well, of course, you know how much, teenagers listen to their parents, right? So whatever, kind of a little bit. So sure enough, my daughter went in, it flared up. She said, no, but what's going on? And I said, just persist, go a little bit slower, but just persist. And sure enough, then obviously it helped. But yeah, you've got, yeah, it does. I have had that for some people talk about it, and it's been great. But you will get sometimes a little bit of flare at first, and so you have to really get them to understand that, or else they're going to say, "Yeah, forget this." Right? It's making it worse. Right?
And then a lot of people might be thinking, okay, cool. Well, sauna sounds great. I mean, obviously your saunas are more expensive than the cheaper saunas. I mean, you can get like a cheap sauna for like $2,000 at Home Depot, but we're going to run into a lot of these issues that you guys are talking about right now. So obviously everyone can make their own decision based on their own budget and all that stuff. But what I love about what you guys are doing is that you have many different options. You have a option that is just like one person sauna that you could put in an apartment very easily. It's like 8 feet, 7 feet tall, and it's got all the nooks and crannies. You got these larger corner units if you want to have like 2 people or even more. And it's very easy to put together. And another thing that's interesting is that it's not easy just to put together, but it's easy to take apart. So if you need to move it somewhere, I think that's a really big feature.
Yeah, I've moved mine a couple of times. And you just, as long as you're careful with the moldings, you don't snap one off or something. You just put some blankets around it. It's totally fine. Yeah, it's nice because a lot of people, let's say you're renting a place and you only have a one-person unit is 36 by 36, so 3 feet by 3 feet. Or you go to the ones that's a little bit bigger that says 2 people and it's 40 by 48. So it is, most of the time people have a spot to put it in. And those units just go on a normal 15 amp circuit. It costs, depending on, obviously it depends on your hydro, but it might cost 13 to 15 cents an hour to run. So you won't notice any difference on your hydro bill, right?
Wow, 13, 15 cents. That's nothing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Nothing.
On the smaller unit, it's going to cost a little bit more for the bigger units, but it's still, it's I'd be surprised if you notice anything on your hydro bill.
Interesting. That's incredible. I would think that it would be a mound of energy, would black out the city to put all this electricity to create a giant furnace, right?
Yeah. Well, you have to see a 2-person one's about, 1,600 watts. So it's just like if let's say you had a hair dryer, it might be 1,500 watts, or you had a heater that you use to warm up a room is usually about 1,500 watts. So it's just a little bit higher than that. It's not, so it's not this huge draw.
And I also learned that with sauna use, it's better, like you say, you get too hot, but you still want to stay in. It's better just to open the door instead of try to just decrease the temperature. And that might sound silly, but it's like an oven, right? If you want to decrease the temperature quickly, if I'm cooking my sweet potatoes, if you open the door, it's going to let some cold air in instead of just trying to slowly go down. It's going to be much slower.
Yeah. You find most of the time people don't have to open the door. Once you'll get used to a temperature that you're comfortable with, and then you'll set it at that or whatever. And as you sweat more, of course, the sweating is cooling you down because of the evaporation. So where people sometimes get a little bit hot early on. So that's why I prefer most of the time. Someone says, "Hey, I want to get in at 145 degrees." Okay, and they get in. It's quite hot at first. But if you start in a little bit lower temperature, let's say you get in at 115 or 120 and let it climb up, then your body's climatized. And then by the time you're sweating, let's say you're sweating in 10 minutes or 12 minutes or something, then you're getting the higher temperature, it's actually cooling you down. So most of the time you don't have to open the door in our saunas, right?
I love it. Well, Randy, this has been a joy. This has been very educational. I'm
Yeah,
excited for
well,
everyone
I
to look into
appreciate you
this.
having me on.
Real quickly, if there's anything that you could have told yourself if you went back in time to maybe when you were in high school or college before you got into this sauna business, before becoming a firefighter, what's like 1, 2, or 3 sort of life lessons you would have told yourself that could have saved you a ton of time, money, headache, heartache, you name it?
I would have told myself to um, not be so confident that I had all the answers already on, because I obviously didn't. And things like, I use as an example, I thought health food stores were for hippies and yuppies. Very, very ignorant on my part. I hadn't really opened up my mind. It wasn't until I had my serious health problems, and I had, like I said, parasites and fungi. I had all that comes along. It often comes along with heavy metals. The person that has heavy metals, it's not unusual to have parasites and fungi. It's a whole other issue, but it's and so once you bring your heavy metals down, it's a lot easier to deal with the critters. Now, if it's no, I guess the other thing too is, again, my diet, I dramatically changed. I made it organic. I made it more alkaline. I stayed away from excitotoxins. But no, I think the lesson I got out of that is, before, when I used to climb and stuff, I would be happy if I achieved this peak in this certain time period, and I achieved this, climb over there or whatever. And then after I had my health problems and I recovered, I thought, wow, isn't this so good to walk in the forest again? Isn't this so good to be able to actually put on skis again, rather than some cliff I'm going to jump over, right? Even though it's on the ski patrol and the off time, we did some crazy things, right? So, it's more living for the moment and really savoring all these things you took for granted, right?
I love that. And for anybody that is like, all right, I'm sold, I'm all in. Let me learn about the saunas. Where can people go to contact your team and get more information?
Yeah, the website is called radianthealthsaunas.com, and the toll-free number is 1-888-291-6544. And I've got, really good staff that could, answer, they won't answer any health questions, unfortunately, but they can answer any other questions regarding the saunas, and maybe, they'd love to hear from you.
Got it. Well, we appreciate you. Until next time, looking forward to staying in
Thanks.
touch.
Thanks, Ian, for having me on. I really appreciate it.